So today I'm going to show you a household budget template on Excel, as well as a tutorial on how to really actually set this blank template up. Now here's a really cool thing, and make sure you stick around because I'm going to tell you how you can get this budget template entirely for free, and we're going to go into this starting right now. Hello fellow wealth builders, and welcome back to the True Financials channel. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing the household budget template and the tutorial to kind of go over all this stuff. But first, if by chance you are new here and this is your first video with us, my name is Dennis and I love talking about personal finance to really help you build your wealth and become more financially free. And I want to take you on this journey of financial freedom, so make sure to hit that subscribe icon down below and then also the bell to get notifications when new videos go up. So here is the budget template. Now this is something that I actually created on Excel personally myself, so I will have this available for you, so just make sure you stick around and I'll let you know how you can actually get a hold of one of these entirely for free. Now we're going to go over the overall budget first and foremost, and then we're going to go through step by step individually to see how you actually set these things up. Alright, so I'm going to actually move some things around here, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so that things are a lot easier to see when it comes to the actual budget. All right, so now that we're all zoomed in, we're going to see here at the very top, of course, is going to be the income category. Now, all of these budget areas are set up so that way they kind of flow through everything together. So you have your income coming in, and then you have everything else. So we're going to kind of go through these step by step and kind of go into the details of how this budget Excel sheet works. So that way, if you download it and want to use it directly, you exactly know how to plug in your numbers. But we're going to go into some details here in just a little bit. So make sure you're sticking around if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this Excel sheet. And so at the very top here, of course, you're going to see a couple different categories. You're going to see which category it is. So this is income, and we have a couple different sections here for us. Now, of course, for this section, we just have regular income, side hustle, and other. Now, of course, you can add or take away things. You can even split it by each person individually, however you see fit. And that's the great thing about this, is that you can actually change these things up once you have this downloaded in any way you want. Now, of course, we have the budgeted category. This is for how we actually set up every month prior to that month beginning. We want to gauge how much we're going to actually be spending on each category. Then we have the actual category. This can be plugged in on a daily, weekly, or even monthly basis as you go along for that month. Now, I personally like doing it on a weekly basis, so that way I can keep up with everything as far as how we are doing in every single category. But it's definitely up to you. I don't really recommend doing once a month just because it makes it really hard to keep up with everything. Plus, if you start going over in certain categories throughout the month, it's harder to tell. And then the last category we have, of course, is the difference category. This just kind of helps keep an eye out when things are going over, or you do have a little bit of excess on a certain budget line, so that way you can spend a little bit more or however you see fit. So those will go into the plus and minuses, and we'll see here in a little bit once we start plugging in numbers how that actually works. Before we continue on with more detailed information, I'm going to take you through the rest of the budget sheet so you can kind of just take a look at it. The next category we have is the cost of living. This just is going to have a bunch of different things as far as all your bills and the things that you spend your money on. I just have a couple items available here that I already plugged in for you, but of course you can change them as needed, or you can add things or even delete things as well. And I'll show you how to delete stuff here in just a little bit. But again, this also has the actual, or the budgeted and the actual category, as well as the difference category as well, which the difference category is going to be the most important one over here, because for things such as like the groceries, you'll be able to see if you're positive or negative throughout the week so far, every single week for the whole month. And then that way you can kind of gauge whether you can spend more or have to cut back a little bit. So then the next category after that is going to be the debt category. This is where you would plug in all the debts that you have, the minimums that you have to pay, the actual amount that they have on there, and then the difference. Now, when I put minimum, I put the minimum that you do need to be able to pay for that debt, because if you are following like the debt snowball method, which I will have a video up here if you're not too familiar with that method, but if you're doing like the debt snowball method, having the minimums on those is really beneficial. Or if you're even doing the debt avalanche as well, having the minimums on everything else but the one that you're paying the most on, that's gonna be the most important reason that we have that there, to just kind of help gauge what the minimum amount for each category is. And of course you can add more throughout the month. That's why we have the actual category and then the difference that you're actually doing. Now here, the cool thing is there is a remaining balance. So this is what you had started with for the month, and then this is what the new balance is. The great thing is when you plug in the remaining balance and then you plug in your actual numbers, these numbers will actually change in real time, and I'll go ahead and show you guys that in just a little bit as we finish up with the rest of the showcasing of the app, or the Excel, I should say, Excel sheet. So next up is going to be the sinking funds. This is one of my personal favorite sections when it comes to budgets. This really helps you kind of gauge, how to spend your money properly for the future when it comes to budgets, because one of the hardest things to do is having an expense that is anywhere from like $400 to $1,000 all in one month. It can really take a damper on your budgets. So having things planned out for the future can do wondrous things. Now, one easy example is something such as Christmas, or like the holidays or birthdays, or a vacation that you want, something that is going to be a year, even 6 months down the road, that you can start putting money aside for. And that's what this section really does. So you name the sinking funds, you put how much you want to put that month, the actual amount, and then the difference. So very similar to the debts, but obviously we're adding money instead of having to pay something down. The prior balance, and then of course the new balance that's there. Now the next category over here is going to be the investing in retirement account. Now this is where if you are adding money directly outside of like a paycheck from like a 401k, if you're just doing into an IRA or just a personal investing account, this is where you can actually add those things in there, so that way you can make sure that you're gauging the amount of money that you're spending inside of investments. Now, this is not for the actual growth of the investments. This is just the actual dollar amount. So keep that in mind. I'll show you in the net worth category where you can actually plug in your actual value of your investments, which is actually one of my favorite things about these budget sheets that I feel like are a little bit different than a lot of other budget sheets because the net worth actually gives you so much more of a overall picture of how you're doing for your actual finances. So the next category over here is going to be the cash flow budgeted. Now the cash flow budgeted is for the beginning of the month when you're actually starting to test everything out as far as what you're going to be spending money on and what you're going to be not spending money on. And then that way you're going to be able to see if you're budgeting everything properly. So if your incomes are, more than your expenses, then you're going to have a positive net. If your income is less than your expenses, then you're going to have a negative net, and you're going to have to readjust some of those numbers. So that really helps out, so that way you can actually make sure that you're budgeting everything properly. And then the actual cash flow kind of just showcases as you're moving along where you're kind of standing at when it comes to what you actually had budgeted. So this actually just gives you a whole overview of the actual budget overall itself. And then the next category over here, this is my personal favorite one. This is the net worth category. Now, the net worth for me, like I mentioned, really gives an overall view of how our actual finances are doing. Are we moving in the right direction? Are we creating positive net worth? And if you're not too familiar with net worth, it's really your assets minus your liabilities. Now, there's a lot of different things when it comes to what is considered net worth. Of course, this can depend on you personally because it is personal finance, but you can put whatever you feel is necessary in these categories. Now, of course, if you have like a home, a car, if you have loans, those things are going to go in the asset and the liability categories according to their position. So for an example, if you own a home and it's worth $200,000, it would go in the asset category. But if you have a loan on that home, that would go in the liabilities category. I do have a difference category in here just to kind of see the growth of the net worth assets. If you want to choose that, you can actually also add that into the liabilities to see the differences if you want to see those things moving down, because hopefully most of the time you are moving your liabilities on the downward trend. Now, those things added together, you will have your total net worth right over here. Now, I personally have a goal of hitting $1 million net worth. So that's what it shows here. You can actually change this if you want, or if you want to eliminate all of it minus the total net worth, you can do that as well. I just like having a goal so that way I can see my progress every single month or every single year, because as I mentioned, when you are looking at the net worth, it really helps kind of hone in overall your finances and how you're doing. And so having that goal really kind of helps out with the idea of, how am I doing? Am I doing the right things? Is it working properly for me? So now that we kind of looked over the overall budget, now we're going to kind of just start playing around with some of the different things on here, so that way you can get an idea on how things work and if you want to plug in your numbers and what they look like. So of course, here at the very top, we're going to go ahead and pretend like we are budgeting for a new month, but we're not going to go through this whole thing. We're just going to go through each, like 1 or 2 lines in each category. So for the budgeted income, let's go ahead and say that you get paid $2,500 for that given month. So all of a sudden you're going to see it pop up red on the difference category, and then in the budgeted category we have $2,500. So now what that means is that we budgeted $2,500, we haven't made anything yet. Now, of course, if you get paid on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, once a month, twice a month, however you get paid, you can plug these numbers in. So let's go ahead and say that, your first paycheck, you got, half of that. So you got $1,250. So you plug that number in. Let's just say for some reason you're getting that exact amount every single paycheck. So that means your difference actually changed now to negative 1,250. And then let's say you go ahead and add that second amount in, so it totals up to 2,500. You're back at the difference of 0 in the green, and now you're sitting at exact amounts. Now, of course, if you got paid a little bit more, which is always a nice thing, so let's say an extra $5, you will see that number on the difference category bump up an extra $5. And so that will actually trickle down all the way to the income budgeted, of course, and then the cash flow budgeted, I should say, and then the cash flow actual categories as well. So you can see these numbers plugged in. Obviously, there's no expenses right now, so the nets are just all the income that has come in. So we're going to go ahead and leave that up there. And we're going to start working through some of the rest of these. And like I said, I'm only going to do a couple examples on each line, so that way we can kind of keep this to a minimum when it comes to the video size, but we'll keep going. Now, as I mentioned, stick around because I'm going to tell you how to actually get this for free. So if you're still sticking around, I will be mentioning that here in just a little bit, and then that way you can get you can actually download this template entirely for free and utilize it the way you would like to, or utilize it the same way that I'm actually utilizing it in my budget videos. So here at the very top, let's say you have a mortgage of $800. So you're going to budget $800. Obviously, mortgages, unless you have a variable rate, are going to be exactly the same. So we're going to budget $800. But now we're going to go ahead and just add to the groceries. Let's say you have a budget of $200 for groceries, but you actually ended up spending $215 for your groceries. Now, of course, that's going to put you over by $15 in this category, which is, you know, something to always keep in consideration. So that's why it turns red. So that way you understand that, hey, that is in the negative. I got to make sure that I keep that in line. So of course, you're going to be able to add onto this if you needed to. And then you have a bunch of different categories that you can do. As I mentioned, you can change these as needed. But let's go ahead and say that you actually don't need all of these lines. There's actually a way, if you hover over to whatever number you want, you can actually right click on that number and you can hit delete, and that'll actually delete a line from that area. So if you don't want all those extra lines, or if you don't need them, you can actually delete a line. And that will actually help out so to keep everything a little bit more fluid when it comes to things that change, because the thing about budgets is that every single month can be a little bit different, so they're not going to always be exactly the same. So now, as you can see, the total cost of living was budgeted $1,000, but of course, because we went just a little bit over on the grocery budget, the actual was $1,015 that we actually spent. And then if you scroll down here, you're going to see in our expense categories, those actually did change, because now we have $1,000 in expenses, but we actually spent in the actual category $1,015. So that actually nets us $1,409 to still spend for the month. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the debt category. So let's go ahead and say that you have a student loan. So if you have a student loan, let's say the minimum is $300 for that student loan, and then you pay, you know, $320 for that. And let's say you had a balance of $21,000. So all of a sudden, because you plug those numbers in, it's going to drop it down from $21,000 to $20,680. Now, of course, this doesn't take into account the interest that you accrue on that loan, but just, you know, easy numbers. You can actually even change the remaining balance every single month, like I do, so that way it keeps up with everything in the actual numbers. But that's going to be right there for you. Now, one thing you can do too is you can say, well, hey, I got a few more extra debts than the lines that are provided. You can actually add additional lines. And the way you do that is similar to how you would remove a line, you can add a line. So if you hover over the numbers on the left-hand side and then you right-click, you can actually go to Insert over here, and it'll actually take into another line. And the great thing is this will actually automatically, mathematically put it into the totals category for you properly, as well as the actuals, and then flow down through the rest of the chart. So as long as you're doing it within that range, in that box, that it'll actually do it for you. So make sure you're not doing it after the totals or right on the total for that given area, making sure that you're like somewhere within the middle to add that extra category, so that way you can actually have that all taken care of, and then all the math still works for you. And then next up is going to be our sinking funds. So sinking funds are, as I mentioned earlier, just a way so that way you can actually plan properly for your future and getting things taken care of when it needed. So let's go ahead and, like I mentioned earlier, let's say you have like a Christmas fund, and that you want to budget, you know, $50 for that month, because let's say every month you want to put $50 like we do, and then that way by Christmas time you have, you know, $400, $500, $600 into your account and you're ready to go. And let's say you had $300 already in there. So from here you can see that with the Christmas fund, you added $50, you actually spent $50, you had $300 prior, and then now your new balance is $350. So there you can keep adding more sections if you needed to, but that way you can actually understand what's going in and where it's going. Now, if you wanted to, and you can possibly do it with your bank accounts, actually having multiple savings accounts is a great way to also kind of keep everything separated. I personally have over 7 savings accounts, so that way all of these funds are actually in their own accounts, so they match up properly with what we have on the budget sheet here. But then it makes it really easy, so we know exactly what the money's for in that given account. Instead of having one savings account with everything together, we have all those separate accounts. Now, the nice thing is we have Capital One, and that actually allows us to have multiple savings accounts without the additional costs and the fees that other banks might charge you. So keep that in mind if you're wanting to open up other accounts, so that way you don't get charged those extra fees. And then next up here is going to be the investing section. So let's say you have a personal IRA that you want to invest in, and let's say you're going to do an extra $100 for that given month, but then you actually ended up putting $115 because you were feeling very generous for yourself. So again, you're going to see the positive over here in the difference category versus what you actually put in, and then over down here in the budgeted category, you're going to see the expenses were budgeted for $1,450 with a net of $1,050. Now, ideally, you wouldn't be putting the budgeted line in as well as the same time as the actual line. You would be doing them separately. This is just obviously for examples. The nice thing is if you actually want to see these being plugged in real time, when it comes to the budgeted line, if you actually check out my budget videos that come out usually a couple days before the beginning of a new month, you can actually see me doing the edits in real time. Obviously, some of the numbers stay the same every month, but some of the other numbers do change. So you can actually check that out. I'll post a video up here for you to be able to check out if you are interested after this video is completed, because you still need to get that budget sheet. So that's going to add that all up there for you. And then what you'll do is at the end of your budget, once you have all your budgeted stuff in, you want to make sure that you have a positive net on there, so that way you know that your money is going on the right places. And then at the end of the month, or during the month I should say, while you're actually plugging those numbers in, you can keep a track of how you're doing so far on the amount that you told yourself you're going to set, and then how much you actually spent in those given categories and what the net is left over. So that was the most simplest format when it comes to this budget sheet and being able to plug these numbers in and setting everything up for yourself so you can do these. As I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and mention how you can actually get this entirely for free, and you can edit these things however you want. If you like the way this is set up and you want to use it that way, you can just go ahead and get started and start plugging your numbers in right away. And then if you are wanting to change some things up, it is yours after you download it to be able to utilize it the way you want to. You can adjust things, you can move things around, and you can do it that way. Now, to be able to actually download this template, all you have to do is go to my website, truefinancials.com, and I'll have that in the top of the show notes for you to be able to check out. And you're going to go to the bottom of the pages, any pages that you want, and you're going to see a thing to sign up for the newsletter. And if you go ahead and toss in your email, I will actually go ahead and forward you an email very shortly after with a welcome letter. And then also in the bottom of that email, you will actually go ahead and see a thing that says download your free budget template. Now, if you're already just on the website itself, within I think it was 45 seconds or 50 seconds, that one, pop-up will come up and say, hey, do you want to get the budget sheet? And then you just plug in your email address as well. Now, the nice thing is I don't spam people's email or sell people's email. I usually do about, I would say, a quarterly newsletter to just let people know about things that are going on with the True Financials channel, and if there's any updates to the budget sheets, any of those kind of things, I will send those out. But I usually try to only do a couple a year, so I don't bombard you guys with random things that you're not necessarily needing to hear about. So if you decide to go ahead and download that and utilize this app, let me know in the comments down below. I really want to hear from you. If there's any ideas that you want to see implemented on these budget sheets, let me know. I've actually had some people put in some suggestions, and I've actually utilized those suggestions to make this budget that much better. So I always do appreciate feedback. You can either leave them in the comments or send me an email as well. But I do really appreciate when people utilize this to really help themselves, because that's going to be the main goal, is to really help you get better when it comes to managing your personal finances. Now, if you are interested in watching more videos, I will have 2 videos right here for you to continue watching. One of them is going to be my actual budgets that I do make on a given basis. And then the other video is going to be stuff that people make mistakes on when it comes to their budgets. And so that video can actually help you out when it comes to getting things done the right way the first time and not constantly making those same mistakes.